Yesterday, I suggested the less vitriol at President Trump may have been a mitigating factor in the shooter's plan to kill Republicans. I cited example after example of liberal politicians and celebrities using deadly metaphors for their dislike of Trump policies. But instead of a mea culpa, delusional Democrat Nancy Pelosi decided it wasn't their fault and called out Republicans for the attack on, wait for it, Republicans.
I think that the comments made by my Republican colleagues are outrageous, beneath the dignity of the job that they hold, beneath the dignity of the respect that we would like Congress to command. How dare they say such a thing? How dare they?
Governor, more divisiveness coming from the left.
I mean, when did she say this? Was this like yesterday or today?
Yeah.
My gosh. I mean, everybody was saying, how long will this civility last? Well, now we know. Not very long. And I'm not surprised. I mean, I remember after 9/11, you had all the members of Congress standing at the Capitol steps singing God Bless America. Everybody was together, and that didn't last but a few days either. And it's unfortunate, but I think we also need to pull back and remind ourselves that what makes this a great nation is the fact that we can disagree. We can even yell and scream at each other. That's all part of America. What we can't do is shoot each other. And we have to come to a place where we understand that there is something that we don't talk about very much, but this is the heart of how to fix it. It's called morality. And if people had a moral conscience in which they said, I value you as a person. I don't value what you stand for. I don't agree with it, but I value you, and therefore I would do nothing to ever hurt you or to impede your ability or yours or yours or yours. That's where we're lacking in this country.
Yeah, but James, when you have crazy people mixed in, the governor's right. Morality amongst normal people would say, hey, let's take a step back, take a breath, and maybe ratchet down the rhetoric. But a lot of crazy people are listening to these politicians, celebrities, and media personalities saying, hey, they mean business, therefore I got to take things into my own hands.
Yeah, and what's maybe really disturbing is that there's actually no evidence this guy was crazy. There's no history, as far as we've seen in media accounts, of psychological illness, psychiatric issues. Obviously a very bad guy from his history even before the shooting, but you do struggle to understand this. But look, it's obviously you get yourself into trouble assigning blame for these kind of things to people who are not the shooter. But I think this is a moment where it would be nice if, for example, critics of the president stop calling themselves the resistance, as if they're akin to the French fighting Nazis in World War II. That's not what we have here in this country. It'd be nice if they said, he is my president.
And may I also add the resistance on social media. It's resist, and it's also Antifa, which is the anti-fascist movement, and they're the same group, the anti-Trump group.
As if we have a fascist government in the United States. And, you know, it's a good moment to think, you know, maybe the Bernie Sanders is my president T-shirt ought to go now.
Well, you know, I never want to get rid of a nice T-shirt if you like it.
Okay, fair point.
The shooter, bad guy. He has a history of being cruel to animals, to children, to his girlfriend. He's a bad guy. We need to make sure also to not go too far in, you know, blaming other people, because, like you said, that can be a little slippery. Shooting, shooter's fault. He was an adult guy, his fault. But when something like this happens, you should be inspired to, for the sake of goodness, wanting to join together because something like this happens.
But, Ebony, when the other side of the political spectrum and the crazy people on the opposite side, they look at the other side being not only just a political nemesis and opposite to their views, when they actually start to feel it's some sort of physical threat, that's when we get in trouble. And a lot of people aren't as rational as the 5 people on this set right now.
No, they're not, Eric. And that's why, you know, as Governor Huckabee was speaking, humanity is what I hear you speaking about as well. A moral compass, treating each other as like human beings. And we are beyond just the D's or the R's or the I's or the big L's or little L's beside our political beliefs. We are human beings. And that's not what we have anymore, Eric. What we have are people that don't just hate Donald Trump because of a border wall policy, or don't just hate Barack Obama because of Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. They despise the essence of who they are and what they represent. And this is what we're seeing play out.
Listen to this, though. Let's take a look. It brings up 2 recent examples that showcase how the left is using more and more violent methods to make their political points. First, check this out. The Berkeley, California riots in February, where a right-wing provocateur was set to speak on campus, which instead devolved into absolute chaos when left-wing goons went on a rampage, leading to the cancellation of the event. Remember that one? Also, second, just this past weekend, where a far-left counter-demonstration attacked anti-Sharia law protesters holding rallies across the country. Now, Gov, I got, beat up a little bit last night for a monologue that I put blaming the left, but these are left-wing protests. They're getting more and more violent.
What's really troubling is Berkeley was once the center of the free speech movement. My gosh, when I was a teenager back in the 60s, it was where people were rioting to make sure that other people could be heard. Now they're rioting so that people can't be heard. And I'm wondering, where are those aging hippies, those ones who now get free Part D Medicare drugs, who ought to be mellowed out enough to be able to say, hey, kids, we were fighting for your right to hear speech you didn't like, not to shut it down. That really concerns me, that people don't even understand the genius of America is that we can have speech that we disagree with, but we don't have to be disagreeable when we hear it.
And see, Kat, in my opinion, is when there are people who felt like they've been left behind by the world, by the economy, by America, and they see these left-wing protests get violent like that, they start to say, I want to be part of that, and they're going to make it bigger and bigger to call attention to whatever their thing is.
Yeah, again, though, I don't think that it's anyone's fault but a murderer when a murder happens. I really think that it's important to say that. I think that for many reasons, it's very clear that the rhetoric on both sides has gotten very heated. That's very, very clear. And, of course, when you're talking about protest speeches, you don't see right-wing people protesting left-wing stuff like that. I will say that. But overall, there's nothing beneficial about slinging vitriol back and forth. So it doesn't have to be a case where, oh, don't sling this kind of hatred because this will happen. We shouldn't want to sling this kind of hatred, period.
But do you not think that this ratchet of violence, taking the protest to the next level of violence and rioting, is partly responsible for things like what happened yesterday?
I think the 66-year-old adult man who shot those people is the one who's responsible for shooting.
Okay, what do you think, Ebony? Where do you land on this one?
I mean, I agree ultimately. Of course, Kat's right. This is his responsibility. But I want to get back to something James said, which is that we talk about mental illness. There was nothing documented in this guy's history. We don't have a diagnosis of bipolar or schizophrenia. But again, I think what we're all kind of talking around and touching on a bit is the hysteria that some people are finding themselves around political disagreement. It is no longer just a normal thing. I mean, it is really, truly, to me, Eric, broaching a place of absolute hysteria that is playing out in a violent way.
Well, so I don't know if producers can do that second clip again. James, take a look again. Remember, what this was in the weekend, last weekend in New York, was anti-Sharia protesters. They were calm. They were protesting. They were falling within their First Amendment right to do what they were doing. It's when the opposite said, we don't like what you represent, it became violent. They became violent, and that was the left wing beating up on the anti-Sharia protesters. Yeah,
the attempted political assassination on Wednesday this week obviously was on a much higher level. We should react more. But this is a growing trend of more violence, attempts to silence people. Not to blame anyone for particular actions, but if we are talking about why is the First Amendment no longer respected, why is free speech no longer respected across the political spectrum, you have to put some of the blame on Hillary Clinton, who basically led a campaign to prevent people from making a movie about her. A lot of people on the left, they say Citizens United, as if this was some great, horrible stain on American history. What it said was you can make a movie criticizing Hillary Clinton, and you can get people to distribute it.
Question, James. Now, I'm no Hillary Clinton fan. Yeah. I've been very clear about that. But you're not connecting Hillary Clinton to what happened yesterday.
No, I'm not at all.
Okay.
To be clear, I'm not assigning any blame to any violence.
Okay.
What I am saying is to go back to your question about where did tolerance for the First Amendment go? Don't we believe in free speech anymore? Well, that's part of the problem. Free speech used to be...
Is free speech, are we allowed to say... we cited example after example yesterday of Democrats saying the Republican health care law will kill you. It will kill your children. It's dead. Nancy Pelosi herself said it's deadly. Isn't that... free speech, yes, we all agree, but there's a line where free speech becomes dangerous speech.
Can I ask you this question, Eric? I don't like it either, but here we go. In the Tea Party, when Barack Obama came out with the Affordable Care Act, people felt like that was socialism. They called Barack Obama a socialist. That's fine. Let's say you take that position. People in the Tea Party said that that type of socialism will kill us and kill America. And that language is out there, and we all know that.
You know, I think that there's something maybe we're missing here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, that did happen, right?
Well, I think sometimes the reason this stuff gets so overheated is because it's all some people do. that they have a one-dimensional
Really true.
life.
They need hobbies.
No, let me be
I
honest.
hear you.
I hear people and they say, I watch news all day long. Then I tell them, I feel sorry for you. Listen to some music. Put a cork and a hook in the water and catch some fish. Take a walk. Do something else with your life. For God's sake, don't just spend all of it.
And they just tweet at people they hate all day. Nothing but hate typing.
That will make anybody crazy.
Have some good
you
barbecue.
don't even. What's that?
Have some good barbecue.
Have some great barbecue.
When this shooter belongs to a Facebook group called Terminate the Republican Party, and when former Attorney General Loretta Lynch says in a video talking about protesting, they've marched, they've bled, and yes, some have died. We did this before. We can do this again. I don't know. It just feels like we've ventured beyond free speech into dangerous speech.
Okay, so there is dangerous speech that is free speech. That's why I'm trying to ask you, I'm talking about free speech. Whenever I talk about free speech on the show, people think I mean good speech. I would not say that some of these things are good speech. They're certainly not nice, and some of them can be dangerous, but they are under the First Amendment. So what do we do about it? I don't want the government to be in the position of deciding what is and is not acceptable speech, because that's a really dangerous place to be.
No, don't get me wrong. I'm not suggesting any law that limits someone from saying, hey, that health care law could be deadly or is deadly. I'm saying that we can point the finger at these lawmakers and say, you're at least partly responsible.
You're talking about human decency.
Mitigating factor?
I think I hear you talking about human decency, Eric, and certainly I think we can all agree that would be nice to return to.
All right, I hear music. Must mean time to go.